guys, the Super Review Show here for another editorial video. I done a couple of these lately, but I figured why not do another one. This is a video about an editorial video about rock and roll books by members of bands or their original members that have left the band, whatever. This is a video about rock and roll books that I recommend that you check out if you're looking to explore the historical side of the artist, or just in general, if you're interested in the genre. There's some books that I personally recommend from yours truly, the J-Man. So let's start off by saying that, mind you, some of these are going to be no-brainer for if you've seen me for a long enough time, but I will say that these are some of the books that I personally recommend. Here we go. I Am Brian Wilson. I have two copies of this. This is one copy that I got. The hardcover is over there. It's actually, I have two copies. This is my non-signed copy by Brian Wilson. My hardcover copy is signed by Brian Wilson. One day I got another video about that, about my signed stuff that I have collected over the years. But this is a great book to read if you want to get to know the history of the Beach Boys, if you want to get to know his life. He has lived a very sad, he just retired too. And I just saw him with Chicago before they kept going on their tour. This is a very interesting read, truthfully. It's his life. It's with Ben Greenman as well at the bottom there. It's a really solid book overall. It's got a lot of heart to it. It's really his life story. His life is very sad. I mean, if you delve on YouTube and you look up different stuff about Brian Wilson, his life was very sad, truthfully. And this is a great book that I recommend you check out, his life story. That's the first one I have. I have a bunch here, actually, that I've read through. And I've read all of them, too. I've read all the ones I'm showing you today. Next one I have is a no-brainer if you watch my show to any capacity. Bruce Springsteen's Born to Run. This is the hardcover copy of his autobiography. He wrote this by himself, which I applaud him for writing on his own. He's such a great writer in general. This is his life story. It's written up into three parts, if you will. His life story was, without this book, the Broadway play would have never happened. Just a really quick side tangent on that. So the book came out in 2016, and by the end of 2017, he was at the end of his River tour in Australia. The last 2 weeks in the White House, he was with Barack Obama, in his last 2 weeks of his presidency. And Barack Obama said, "Hey, because he read certain chapters from the book to the certain people in the White House, and Barack's like, hey, you should make that into a show." And thus Springsteen on Broadway was born, and it ran for a long time on Broadway. I never got to go see it, unfortunately, even in its 2021 run. But I love the book. It's him talking about Elvis Presley on the Ed Sullivan Show and how it changed his life in when he was 7 years old, and then hearing the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. It's a really solid read overall. If you have not read Bruce Springsteen's autobiography, Born to Run, check it out. This is the hardcover copy. I got it when it first came out. Over him on the cover with his Corvette. Of course, classic. But yeah, Bruce Springsteen's Born to Run, I highly recommend. If you're a fan of Springsteen, even if you're not a fan of any of these artists, read their books. Their story and their life story might change your opinion about them, and it might actually open your eyes up to hearing more of their music, truthfully. But Bruce Springsteen's Born to Run, highly recommend you check it out. Next one I have for you guys is, I read this cover to cover, and I could not believe that I read it cover to cover because it's so long. But Keith Richards' Life from the Rolling Stones. I mean, we're all surprised Keith Richards is still alive. No offense, Keith, but we love you. But you are an incredible human being for being alive this long. Long live the Rolling Stones forever. This was his just life story, but his memoir, basically his life. Is incredibly, the amount of knowledge of music that Keith Richards has is incredible. I recommend you check him out. This book in particular, because this is his autobiography. He wrote it himself. It's one of the greatest rock memoirs out there, truthfully. It's about his life, and it's crazy how he has lived a very crazy, wild life. And some of these books have pictures. This one does, but the Bruce Springsteen one and the Brian Wilson one don't have any pictures in them. But this one has pictures in the middle of it. I'll show you actually a couple really quick. But this is his life story. There's pictures in the book on top of just regular stuff in there too. But it's a great, crazy read. It's funny. he talked about how the Rolling Stones has heard so many people cover "Start Me Up," but no one seems to get the tuning right. For those who are wondering what the tuning is for "Start Me Up," it's an open G chord, an open G tuning, but it's in the key of F. Just want to let you guys know about that. So it's key of F tuning. It's got a couple flats in there too. But the open G tuning for "Start Me Up" by the Rolling Stones, because he said, I've heard so many cover bands do "Start Me Up," but they've never done it right. So just a little plug for that. Next one up, I'm in the middle of reading this one, truthfully. Johnathan Cain's "Don't Stop Believing." He is the keyboardist and the guy who wrote "Don't Stop Believing" for Journey. I'm a huge Journey fan. I mean, I love Journey. They're one of my favorite bands of of the 80s, of the 70s, just in general. They're one of my favorite bands in general. If they tour again, I'm going to go see them in a heartbeat, no matter what. I think they're on tour next year too, actually, 2023. Anyways, this is the cover. Just says "Don't Stop Believing." Johnathan Cain, songwriter and the keyboardist for the band Journey, the man, the band, and the song that inspired generations. Truthfully, this is so far it's been a great read. It just tells his life story. He wrote it after his Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony in 2017. So the book came out like 2018, 19, I believe. But it talks about how he wrote some of the best songs of the decade, like "Open Arms," "Don't Stop Believing," "Faithfully." Great read overall. I recommend you check out "Don't Stop Believing" by Johnathan Cain. Of course, they would call it "Don't Stop Believing" because it's his signature song. He's the guy who wrote it, and it really is a song about. It says, "From one of the greatest bands in history comes a reminder to never give up hope." It's true. Even in times of COVID, don't stop believing, guys. Let's be real. Journey's, Johnathan Cain's "Don't Stop Believing." I recommend it too. I'm in the middle of it. It's great. I love it. I got the hardcover of this book in particular because I wanted to read his story, and I read through it pretty quick. When I'm going through all these books, I'm not a big reader per se, but the stories fascinate me to death about these people. Like, they're on stage. It's one thing to see them on stage, one thing to see them when you go see them in concert. But to actually hear their life story on a book, and in a story in general, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful experience. I think books are, if you're not a reader, get on it. Because it's good books, too. Outside of autobiographies, too. But Dave Grohl's The Storyteller. Dave Grohl, I mean, the guy was the drummer in Nirvana. We all know that. But he's the lead singer of the Foo Fighters. I have read this cover to cover, and his story is just so incredible. How he wrote songs, he wrote so many different types of stories. He really, like, Dave has lived a really, really, really great life. He actually, one of the most memorable parts of this book was when he talked about listening to AC/DC's "Back in Black" for the first time. And he's like, "That was just such a great record. I love that record," and whatever. And that was when he still lived in Virginia as a young boy. But if you have not read Dave Grohl's "The Storyteller," check it out. Great read. There's Dave on the back. He is one of the best out there still doing it, in my opinion. The dude is fantastic. I love Dave Grohl. Dave Grohl, if you're watching this, we love you. You're great. Sorry about Taylor Hawkins. Tragic loss. Very sad, but hopefully you guys come back and make it better. Hopefully you guys can make the Foo Fighters come back in a better way than you already did. I mean, Taylor will be missed forever, but we'll see. But Dave Grohl, Storyteller, highly recommend. Check it out. And phenomenal story. He talks about his heartbreak and stuff in life. It's crazy. Guy's such a nice guy too. Such a genuinely kind human, for lack of a better word. Now, complete opposite side of that. Not necessarily opposite side, but just as far as story wise goes, I read this book cover to cover and I was floored by it, and I really got into them more and more. Anthony Kiedis from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, his book called Scar Tissue. This book is crazy. Like, this is a crazy book to read. You want to talk about someone who should be dead? He should be dead. I'm not kidding when I tell you this. Anthony Kiedis, I don't know, spoilers for the book, but if you're a Chili Peppers fan, you kind of know what I'm talking about. The dude did so much heroin, it's not even funny. Like, he goes in depth in this book about he tried heroin when he was 14. He was hooked on it for a long, long, long time. He should be dead. And God bless him for being alive and being well and being well enough to write music to this day that's still very, very good. they're one of the biggest bands in the world too. The Chili Peppers have become one of the most successful bands out there, and he's the lead singer of it. And his life. This came out in 2005. So right after like the By the Way album, 2002. This book came out, and it's a freaking crazy read. Heroin, drugs, alcohol. The opening monologue is actually like him confessing his soul, his life, saying how like, hey, he injected in his veins. The opening monologue of this book is basically when he talks about how he's injecting his veins with no longer with heroin, but instead he got rid of his hepatitis. I'm reading him right here. He got rid of his hepatitis C. He got rid of all of his drugs, and now he doesn't crave drugs at all. He is actually completely sober to a T. And he talked about it. He said he did cocaine. He used to inject himself with speed, black tar heroin, Persian heroin, and once LSD, all at once. The dude should be dead. And this is a fantastic read. He cured his hepatitis C, ladies and gentlemen, from European treatments. Crazy. Great read. That was just the introduction. Great read overall. I highly recommend check out Scar Tissue by Anthony Kiedis of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. You could tell that's a 2002 Anthony Kiedis too. Just saying. Anyways, there's two more books I want you guys to check out. One is actually another by the Chili Peppers, but it's Flea, Acid for the Children. I've not read this one yet, but I've listened to Flea talk about his life. I've skimmed through the first couple chapters just because I'm reading the other ones too, and I want to get a hold of the other ones, and I want to finish the other ones first. But this one is so good so far. I mean, I read the first chapter, and then I went back to the other books. This is a really great book to read. Flea's Red Hot Chili Peppers. Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Acid for the Children. Crazy. It doesn't go up to like modern day because it only came out in like 2018. I forget actually. It first came out in I don't even know. But Flea, it goes up to when the Chili Peppers first began as a band in like 1983. So right before their first ever show in 83 when they performed out in LA. It goes up to that, and it's a really good read. And it's funny, he talks about meeting Anthony Kiedis, who I just mentioned. He talks about meeting Hello Slovak. He talks about the jazz musicians in his house and how he felt the intangible feelings of music touch him, intangibly though. So that he felt the power of music over him at such a young age. Listening to the jazz musicians like do like the bass piano, because he moved in. I don't want to spoil too much, but his stepdad was a jazz musician, and that's what got him into music. And he went from there. He played the trumpet. Great read overall. I mean, I know a lot of that stuff already, but like, I have to finish reading this book in particular because it's that good of a book. I recommend checking it out. Last book I want to recommend to you guys is not anything to do in particular with an artist, but really one of the biggest DJs of the 70s and 80s, who was in the field doing rock and roll DJing from the get-go. Richard Neer from New York City's WNEW. For those of you who don't know about radio stations in general, obviously rock and roll radio is played through corporate radio now. It's all different programmed. It's not really the same as it used to be. This is a book we talked about on our mixed bag. We did a whole mixed bag show talking about this book, and it's a really solid book overall. If you have not read The Rise and Fall of Rock Radio by Richard Neer from WNEW out of New York City. I mean, we live in New York here. We do a Super Review show in New York. Richard Neer was a legendary DJ. To this day, he's one of the best. He was one of the best DJ ever out there in New York City. I mean, he's a legendary guy, but this guy was a DJ in New York City, as I said, and this is his life, his story of how rock and roll radio kind of the rise and fall of it. Now, some might say, well, rock is dead. It's not dead. If it was, just putting it out there, if rock was dead, that would mean, by default, no one goes to the shows, no one listens to the music whatsoever, and it's not played on radio at all. That, by definition, that's what dead means. And no one is listening to it anymore. Sorry. No one listens to any rock and roll music. But that, by default, that means dead, which is not the case. Plenty of people listen to rock. You go on Spotify, you look at certain songs and so whatnot. A lot of people listening to a lot of different rock and roll musics from different artists in general. It's not dead, ladies and gentlemen. It's really not, truthfully. And this is just talking about the radio formatting of it, how it programmed, how we went from like stuff to iHeartRadio to corporate radio and stuff like that. It's a great book to read over. We talked about this on one of our mixed bag shows. It's called we actually kind of ripped off the title. We called it The Rise and Fall of FM Radio. This is called FM, The Rise and Fall of Rock Radio. It's pretty cool. But Richard Neer is a really legendary guy, and he wrote a life story about this. And actually, the foreword is by Stephen Van Zandt of Bruce Springsteen and the Street Band. I recommend you. But this is a really good book to just find out the behind-the-scenes stuff of rock and roll, of the radio programming, everything about it. It's a really solid book if you want to check this one out. It's a really great book. The Byrds, talk about the Kinks, Paul McCartney, John Lennon, Bob Dylan, you name it. Like, they talk about a lot of great artists here, but it talks about how corporate radio took over and how certain things took over and how certain things fell apart. But it's a really interesting read overall. If you have not read FM, The Rise and Fall of Rock Radio, check it out. And check out our podcast we did talking about specifically the rise and fall of FM radio in general. For not just rock radio in general, but just no one listens to really FM anymore. It's sad, but it's not going to go away. It's just, it's not the centerfold that everyone does streaming now, Spotify, podcasting, stuff like that. YouTube videos, anyone? But yeah, those are all the books I have that I have either read or currently reading or will read at some point. What do you guys think? Are you a fan of any of these artists or any of the books I talked about? Jump down in the comment section below. Share your thoughts on these books. Those are some books I suggest you guys read. So if you want to get to know any other books, check out the ones I listed, or maybe there's a book that you could recommend to me. Jump down in the comment section below and leave any of your thoughts on a book that I maybe, an artist that I didn't mention yet, or some sort of other rock and roll artist that had a book come out that I would check out, you would like me to check out too. So let me know what you guys think with it in the comment section below. What you guys have to say about this. But for all of your editorial videos, keep it locked on the Super Review Show. The J-Man is off to rock. We'll see you guys later.